I hope our guest speaker has had the opportunity to eat. He hasn't. He hasn't. He probably doesn't want to do that. Speak on an empty stomach. But we are honored to have our keynote speaker this year to join us at our annual meeting. He is a best-selling author, TV and radio personality, Brian Kilmeade. And he currently serves as co-host of Fox and Friends. And additionally, he serves as host of Kilmeade and Friends, a nationally syndicated 3-hour radio show on Fox News Radio. Kilmeade is the author of several New York Times best-selling books, including Thomas Jefferson and the Tripoli Pirates, Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans, and George Washington's Secret Six, the spy ring that saved the American Revolution. We're really honored to have him. Now, Brian may not remember this, but he was in Ohio about 3 months ago. And I had the good fortune for the owners that requested of me to do so. You probably know I'm an airline transport pilot. And I was asked to fly him home to Long Island. And what was really sad about that is I took him to the wrong airport. You know, he's smiling right now, but man, he wasn't smiling at that time. Now, I took him to MacArthur, which is in Long Island, and merely 40 miles away is where you wanted to be.
It wasn't your fault.
Oh, great. It wasn't my fault. But anyway, he's safe and he's returned, and we're honored to have him, Mr. Brian Kilmeade. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Now I remember. How's everybody doing? You doing okay? Good news is I'm mobile. I have a lavalier microphone, and I do my best on my feet. I don't like sitting in one place. I like going back and forth, being able to move. I definitely love speaking to groups like this, and I love to have an opportunity to do something you don't usually do. I can't really talk in depth about oil and gas, so I'm going to be your respite, a little bit of a break before you get back to doing what you came here for, and that's increase your business and make connections. But special thanks to the Board of Trustees for having me out here. So thanks so much for the introduction. We did the radio show this morning from Dayton, Ohio. I missed Fox and Friends because I wanted to be here, but we did the radio show. If you had a chance to listen, just to be able to be on the air during this Trump era is like going through a tornado or drinking from a fire hose. It is nonstop, and I'm not kidding. One of the things I always said is that, you know, every time you go to work out or go for a drive or, dare I say, not go near electricity, all of a sudden you come back and you hear, did you hear? And normally I'll have to go back for an example of that, but I only have to go back 4 hours, and you think about it, we took a little bit of a break, we flew in, we're on the ground, we're getting settled, we're doing the things we have to do last night, had a book signing, had a meeting, and all of a sudden you hear, do you hear? What could it be? Just the President of the United States meeting one-on-one with the 34-year-old despot who's never met with another world leader, who wears a unitard every day and wants to blow up the planet. One-on-one. In May. Really? Let the debate begin. So, I mean, you can't take an hour off, and then the perspectives and the anger and the preconceived premonitions about the president I voted for or didn't, I'm sure is going to be great. I'm sure is going to be terrible. Everyone goes to their respective corners. Let the games begin. I'm like you, passionate about the country, passionate about the news, and I have a chance to do it. People say I work a lot. I have news for you. This is not work for me. This is thorough enjoyment. And just to give you a little bit of background where I am, talk about the passion I have for history, and a little bit of where I got started, which is in sports. It led to my first 2 books for reasons you wouldn't normally think. But there's some people in the audience, they say, looking to the person next to him and saying, he looks nice, but who the hell is he? And I thought we'd have a few-minute tape. I put this together real quick for a presentation I did for a school, because I know a lot of them didn't watch cable news and don't watch cable. They're watching their iPhones or texting their friend when they should be studying. So I thought, here's a quick look at what I do on television.
Well, when General George Washington was forced to retreat from New York
this
City
isn't
in
it.
1776 because of the British taking
No, this
taking
isn't
over,
it.
many thought the American Revolution might soon be over, but
Yeah.
instead...
No. Let's go to the, there's another one.
Welcome to Broadway in New York City. They call this the crossroads
see the video
of the
we're
world.
set.
Hi, everybody. This is Brian Kilmeade. This is Kilmeade and Friends. And if you're watching online, KilmeadeandFriends.com, we're actually behind the scenes with TV cameras.
Final meeting before the final rehearsal for Fox NFL Sunday behind closed doors. Finishing touches on the script. We're about to go inside.
How you doing, man?
Terry, hours before the big game. 100 million people watching, all these countries. What are your thoughts?
You're never going to get a view like this. Look at straight down Broadway. This is absolutely incredible. It's time for this week's Celebrity Stroll, where I convince a famous person to skip lunch and go for a walk with me instead.
Sammy Hagar, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer. Cook.
Name my namesake.
And you also say he was a liar.
When you talk about your opponents, one guy you were a big supporter of, but you've been critical of since, is Mitt Romney. I like Mitt Romney. He blew it. He choked. Something happened to him. That's an election that should have been won.
You think you could have won it?
I would have won it.
You think I'm running, right? My gut tells me this announced coming in May and June that you're in.
Okay, let's see what happens.
Donald Trump will be the 45th president of the United States.
And I've been a friend of your show for a long time. Remember those call-ins, right?
For years.
Can you give me an example of a time when someone was critical of you and you thought to yourself, I deserve that hit. I deserve that column. I deserve
probably
that.
I could never do that.
I'm not going to give you any ideas.
No. While you're here, as comfortable as you look forward to getting home?
I love coming to experience how people live and what it's like to be just stacked on top of each other. So look, this morning I'm watching Fox and Friends. I'm watching you guys. Now tonight, you guys are in my house going to watch our show.
With you.
With me. That's got to be the first time this has ever happened.
Are we going to like this episode?
I think so. I think you're going to like it.
Who is your daddy and what does he do?
Bravo, very good.
I got it?
Very good.
Wow.
He's an action hero. I mean, just look at him.
This is one thing you're most comfortable in. You're a wrestler.
That's going to look a little...
So this should be perfect.
Yeah, that'll fit. That
Right.
fits at 205.
That's fantastic.
For sure.
All right.
That's a nice singlet. Thank you.
I'm thinking right away, Kevin chose Mass People because of me.
You know, we said, how can we do that? And we were sweating many nights thinking
Right.
about how we can, make it more Brian Kilmeade centric.
Really? Yeah.
But yeah, it was a good year financially for that
Bush
stuff.
and Reagan had this idea that you should keep your money.
My wife, my family, I'm in the biggest liberal family in the world. But I had more money when Bush and Reagan was president. I was a little bit. Oh, I shouldn't have said my wife's going to kill me for that one. But
Now let's go outside to find out what happens to Brian in this soon-to-be legendary interview.
Was that out?
yeah, it's up.
How you doing, sir? It's National Hug a News Person Day. I'm offering free hugs. At any moment, you could change your mind, and we could stop walking, and we could just embrace. It's inevitable. I was wondering, can I have a hug? Look at that. Where are you from? Hey, it's called the Tough Mudder, and it's one of the most difficult fitness challenges in the world. The goal is to test strength, to test stamina, to mental toughness.
Ready, set, go! Look out for the barbed wire. And they're down. Brian does a cannonball, modified, and he dives under the wall. What he's in right now is called the Arctic Enema. 10,000 volts. Brian, stand up! Oh my goodness.
Great way to wake up in the morning, Dave.
No kidding. And that's the second time you've done it, right?
Yeah.
Now we're going to strap you in. How do you start it? You use the key. For any reason, you splash down, I need you to pull the key off.
And that's it. That's a quick look what I've done over the last few years. So it's great to be on Fox. The way I got to Fox in 1996, started filling in. Nobody knew what it was or where to find it. We weren't even on in New York City. They tried to put us on a public access channel. That didn't work. People tried to keep Fox down. But little by little, it started gaining audience, and this unknown place became the #1 news network in the country, and Fox and Friends, the #1 morning show in the country. And when you look at that, the New York Times bestsellers, the nationally syndicated radio show, you could be thinking to yourself, wow, things are going good for him, and they are. And the reason why I feel very appreciative and you never see an ego get out of control because I know exactly where I came from. When I went out of college, I had so much momentum in 1986 that I went right to the job I was destined for, and that was a waiter at Bennigan's. And it was certainly a thrill. Thank you. People were lining up to hire me. Oh, wait a second, I got that wrong. They weren't, and I could not get the first job. In fact, so while you have to earn money like all of you who have worked your way up in your own special way, you've had obstacles in your way, you had times in which you never thought you'd be hanging out in a Hilton at a prestigious conference like this. In a way, you look at along the way, you think about different times. So as I started applying and sending my resume out, the one person that came through was Sports Phone. Do you guys know what Sports Phone is? The Brooklyn attendee, yeah. 976-1313. It predated All Sports Radio. And what it did is it gave you updates, and you have to wait till the 6 o'clock news. So every 10 minutes for 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week, I would update you on the world of sports in under a minute in Detroit, Chicago, and New York. And I do that, and I cleared $12,500 a year. And I loved it. And I couldn't believe the first time I was able to write on my taxes, sports anchor. It was a thrill. And I didn't care how much money I was making. I was just going to have fun doing it. And the reason why I think I was able to put caution to the wind, and although there were some days in which I didn't think I'd be successful, and I know this could all end tomorrow, is because when I first went out to achieve a goal, it was to be a great athlete. And it turns out I fell short, way short, specifically to be a great soccer player. And I played from when I was 5 until I was 22, and I ended up as an average player in a Division II team. And at 22, I took off my cleats and I said, wasn't that a waste of time? Most of my friends, ironically, and we've all had friends like this, and you might be that person, my good friend was All-American Big East Player of the Decade. The other one scored the winning goal in the longest game in the history of the NCAA's, his 7th overtime. He went out in the blaze of glory. The other 3 became captains. Everywhere you talk, when we were done with college, and at the end of every summer, I'd hear these great stories. I thought to myself, I outwork these guys, I care more about these guys, but when it came to the trophies and success, they clearly outdistanced me. So I got really used to the fact early that life is not an after-school special. You know those after-school specials where you overcome the obstacles, you score the goal, you win the championship, and you get the girl? I was 0 for 5 on that. But what had happened is, in retrospect, didn't think so then, is I broke my perfect game. I didn't have to live up to an All-American athlete, honors student graduate. I'm not the Oxford person who played professionally, who had turned down professional football to be a major in international studies. I came out, very good student at a very average college with a very average sports background, but with a very great work ethic. I was extremely determined to learn from my first, what I would term failure. And that is, I did not address my weaknesses accurately. I was a guy with great endurance without great speed, so you know what I did? Ran long distance. When I was a guy that needed to be a little agile, lighter on my feet, what did I do in the off season? I lifted weights. Why? Because that's something I did that was good, and I wanted to make it better rather than being honest and addressing my mistakes and my weaknesses. So I said, in this career, I'm going to give it a shot. Arguably, I had more talent doing this than I had doing that. Now, safely to say, I did. So as I started sending tapes out and rejections started coming through, I didn't panic. And in retrospect only, believe me, I sit here at 53 looking back, but I didn't panic because I've already failed once before. And unlike sports, where the coach decides if you play or not, they can't decide whether you're going to give up on your career or not. They can't decide if that rejection from your job will call it quits. You decide. You go up. You decide when you quit. So what I actually brought is not props, but what I kept, and it's fun traveling with this, by the way. This is what's all my rejection letters that I got. And believe me, some of them burned in a fire in California. I kept all of them, from agents to form letters to personal letters to you're the runner-up. We know one thing for sure, you're not the right guy. And which is a form letter, by the way. So as I started making my way through and I get Sports Phone, I go out to Los Angeles and I get a job outside Los Angeles in a place called Ontario where there's an airport and it's 60 miles from where I lived. And I commute back and forth every day. And every 2 weeks I got paid $5.96, but I was on television. And on weekends I picked up an all sports radio job, which was 50,000 watts, and it was the blowtorch of the Southern California. Little did they know this prestigious position had me clear $220 a show. Hooked up with Jim Brown along the way, the legendary running back, because my passion was really news. I thought sports was my best way in. So when I met Jim Brown, I start working on life and race issues, because he don't want to talk sports either. If you know his biography, you know his background, you know how deep he was in the 60s in activism, and let alone what he did in the football field leaving at 29. That led me believe that I definitely want to have more of an impact in society than I did in sports. So, moving on from there, I hear about this sports job open at Fox News Channel. And with all those rejection letters to proof that I was not the right guy, for some reason, when it came to Fox News, I was the right guy. There's something about my tape that they liked. And next thing you know, I filled in. Next thing you know, I get a contract. And when things started going crazy in the Bosnia War and Princess Di dies and the election mess and the Clinton scandals, there's no room for sports. So I was able to transition right into news because of the news job I had in Los Angeles and because I never stopped reading, never stopped researching, because I had a passion for it. So it all came together at Fox. So after a few contracts and we had a lot of success together, I'm still able to be there. But then as part of what I do is when people come into the green room, I talk to them about them. And what do they talk to the sports guy about? They talk about sports. So I would go, what did you play? Kevin Sorbo. What did you play? John Kerry. What did you play, George? And I got their personal stories. And I realized most of their stories are like mine. You know, you wanted to be great, whether you blame yourself or your athletic ability, you hit a ceiling, but they saw it was invaluable. So I thought I'd go over some of these lessons, and looking back, I said one could be a book, and it was called The Games Do Count. You know, as I walked off the field at 22 and said, what a waste of time, well, it turns out it was an invaluable time because I realized success is leading to success has really led to obstacles. Or else if you get success, and this is why these child stars blow up in my opinion, if you get success too early, you don't appreciate it. I appreciate success every day and I come to play as if my job's on the line because I know what it's like not to have success. I don't take it for granted and it's impossible for my ego to get out of control. Unless, of course, I'm brought to the wrong airport at 2 in the morning. So, a couple of stories. I wrote this book, The Games Do Count, and I followed it up with It's How You Play the Game. And I wanted to prove that people in history, whether you're Joe Montana, whether you're George Foreman, or whether you're Patton, or The Rock, or Julie Foudy, or an average everyday person, what you learn in sports, if you don't learn values and ethics, you're going to be screwed by the time you get out. And I'll give you some theories. This one stood out for me for this group. So you think of George Patton, blood and guts, right? My research showed his first goal was to be a great football player. How do I know? We found letters of him writing to his future wife, then girlfriend. Why can't I get on the field? Why can't the coach put me in? Why? Because you're a 130-pound linebacker. No one knew you were a future general, blood and guts guy. But all he talked about is the frustration, is how he is star-crossed. But I would argue the reason why he was a soldier's general, because he knew what it's like to give it his all and not succeed. So I brought over to Mia Hamm, the best women's soccer player ever. And I said, Mia, what is the moment that really paid off the most for you? At 16, she was on the national team. By the time she was 19, she won 2 national championships. I go, and? Well, I got brought into Anson Dorrance's office, and he closed the door, and he said, what's your goal? She goes, well, to be a really good player, win another title. He goes, do you want to be good, right? She goes, yeah. You want to be great? Yeah. Well, when are you going to start working? You don't use your left foot. You don't talk on the field. And I never think you've ever maximized your fitness. She's blown away. She's the best player in the world. She's won a World Cup and 2 NCAA titles. There's people in this room who are good, very smart. But do you want to be great? So she was hurt for about a day. And then she called her parents, and she said, I'm staying on campus this year. And she stayed on campus, didn't tell anyone. She stayed alone in the dorms, and all she did was train. But she wouldn't give him the satisfaction of him seeing her on campus. He would train off campus. And she would train like an animal. And she was going to show him that he was wrong. And one day, he was driving into the University of North Carolina. He looked over, and he sees Mia Hamm. And he started walking up the hill. She didn't see him. And then he walked back, and he wrote her a letter. He said, the vision of a champion is someone drenched with sweat, bent over from exhaustion, when no one else is watching. No one else is watching. That is the key. What do you do when no one else is watching? That really defines who you are. So in a day in which we're all attached and people are talking about everyone taking pictures of everyone, it doesn't matter. If you act with integrity when no one else is watching, if you put the time in without looking for a pat on your back, that will make you from good to great, from fair to good. It'll raise your level. That's what came up to me. So I interviewed 92 people on that, and here's another thing I wanted to share with you that stood out. It's how you win that matters. And I'll bring it to Abraham Lincoln. He had a horrible dad, and his dad would wrestle him for money. And one time he says, there's a guy in the next town, and his name is Jack Armstrong, and I'm going to bring you over there, and you're going to wrestle him. And what he wouldn't do was finish people off. His dad was a brutal guy, and what Abe Lincoln was a very good wrestler, strong as an ox, but he would never finish people off. He would always help them up. So he goes to fight Jack Armstrong in a hostile town, and they fight. And Jack Armstrong's strong, but he's no match for Lincoln. All he did then was start gouging and biting and kicking in the groin, nonstop fouls. Lincoln would not give in. He finally gets him in a hole, and he submits. As soon as he wins, he helps him up. And then the townspeople come in because they all lost all this money to Lincoln's dad. So Armstrong goes back up. He won fair and square, leave him alone. And him and his dad were able to leave. Jack Armstrong and Abraham Lincoln became friends the rest of their life. Why? Because he was a person with integrity. How you win matters. If you get that better deal, if you get that better contract, how you act after you get that contract defines who you are and how people talk about you. And I'll bring you to George Bush, 43. He lived his whole life, as you can imagine, I don't have to tell you, trying to live up to his expectations. My goodness, his dad by 19 was a war hero. He started at Yale at first base and was captain of the team. He was being scouted by major leagues. When Babe Ruth had to turn in his papers, they say, George Bush, you go on that stage, let Babe Ruth hand you the papers. That's what he had to live up to. In the beginning, couldn't do it. In fact, he went to play baseball in high school. He was very good, but when it was time for his teammates and everybody else to go to camps and play in these travel teams, he'd rather do other stuff. He never had the dedication. In retrospect, he said because he didn't want to go all in and be less than his dad. Sure enough, he played 4 years, went to college, made the freshman team, couldn't make the varsity, didn't even bother coming out. Finally said, I put too much pressure on myself my entire life. So he picked up rugby, and he finally became the aggressive leader, the swift runner who would lead practices along the way. He removed the pressure from himself. He handled his alcohol issue, and he went ahead and became president of the United States, who no longer looked to compete with his dad. He looked to laud his dad and not let him down. So how many people here have expectations above their head, whether it's living up to your parents, an older brother, a neighbor, a classmate? How you deal with that stands out. The other thing that stood out is Robin Williams. So Robin Williams, I actually convinced him to call my house, and he calls me from Canada. And just to hear my wife go, Brian, Robin Williams is on the phone, that made my life. She didn't believe it was him, but it was him. He told me he would call, and he did. He was doing that RV movie. So I saw him at Yankee Stadium to show you the difference between Billy Crystal and Robin Williams. So I know they were both athletes. So I said to Billy Crystal, I said, Billy, I'm doing this book called The Games Do Count. People don't go pro what they learn in sports. He said, why would I give you my story? I'd write my own. Thanks. So Robin Williams sitting right there. So I go, same thing. Robin Williams goes, do you have a recorder? We could do it now. I'm like an idiot. I didn't have a recorder. So he goes, all right, take this number down. He goes, you know what? I can't give you my number. Give me yours. I'm thinking, yeah, right. Robin Williams is going to call me. He called me. That's what a great guy is. So I asked him, Rob, what did you do in sports to define you? He says, I was a soccer player. I go, and what did you do? He goes, I was the fourth midfielder on my college team. I go, wow, that's pretty amazing. They played 4 midfielders back then? He goes, no, they played 3. So here's the funniest guy I've ever seen in my life consistently. And I asked him, what do you mean? He goes, I was the first guy off the bench. I was in the best shape. I had the best attitude. My coach loved having me around. But I wasn't as good as the other guys. But it was time to hold the lead. When it was time to spell one of the starters, I was in. So wait a second. The star of every movie, the star on stage, knew how to be a supporting player. And then I talked to some people on his crew. They say, you know what Robin Williams does? He never stays in his trailer. As he comes out and they're shooting other people's scenes when he knows it's getting cold, especially in this Canadian shoot, he would come out of his trailer and entertain everybody because he had that sense of team. He knew what it was like to be and also ran. So when he got to the center stage, he knew how to act. And I'll share another story with you of somebody you never heard of but should. And the name is Danielle Green. And I titled this one, No Excuses. So Danielle Green is brought up in a crack-infested area of Detroit. And even though her dad never knew him, and her mom was addicted to all types of drugs, she would find her way to the basketball court and every single day and play with the guys. with the adults, with the others. In the beginning, she was the cute kid with great talent. And then after a while, she was just as good as all the guys. And then when it came to high school, no one can stop her. Her high school that never won a single division championship won 2 state championships. But she had a goal. Her goal was to go to Notre Dame. And guess what? Notre Dame wanted her. And they took her full ride. What a great story. But she gets there. And she had to be coached. She had to be the 4th best player on her team. In the beginning, she wasn't starting. She couldn't handle it. They said, develop your right hand. You're all lefty. You got to develop your right hand. She's like, I don't need to. I have a great left hand. She had no parents, no real coach. Everyone was in awe of her ability. But when you get to that high level and you're an also-ran, can you be a member of the team? She told me I couldn't. By the time I was done, I was a starter. I got kicked off the team twice. I just said, I'm leaving school early. She tried out for the Detroit Shock. She got cut. And what's she going to do? So she met a guy, started thinking about getting married to a guy, and then she said, listen, she gets engaged, and she says, I got news for you. I'm heading nowhere. I can't just get engaged. I got to get it back and get a degree. She goes, but better yet, I'm going to join the Army. So they give her the ring. She finally found a solid family foundation, and she joins the Army. And in the Army, during basic training, she tells me she learned teamwork. She goes, those guys cared for me as much as my family, anyone I've ever met in my life, and I cared for them. I was one of the guys. There was a couple women in the unit, but for the most part, as a great athlete, she was in the infantry. So guess what they did? Off to Iraq. And off to Iraq she goes. 6 days in a Humvee, she gets blown out. She wakes up missing her left hand. But you know what bothers her most? In that left hand was her wedding ring. So those guys went back to the war zone, dug up her hand, and brought back that ring. She was a member of a team. They would do anything for her, and she would do anything for them. But there she is. What she always loved to do is play basketball. She's a lefty, and she's without a hand, blown up in the Army 6 days in. Is her husband still going to want her? What's she going to do from here on in? And she doesn't have a change of clothes, and she's sitting there rehabbing in Germany. And all of a sudden, a nurse walks up to her and goes, you're Danielle Green. He goes, yeah. She goes, I went to Notre Dame. I was a student. I used to watch you play. She goes, yeah, and she was really depressed. So that coach that she hated happens to be friends with this nurse. That nurse picks up the phone, calls, I forgot her name, she's a famous name, Muffin McGraw, and says, Muffin, Danielle Green just got blown up. You got to check her out. She's really down. Sure enough, she calls up. Danielle picks up the phone. He goes, I want you to come. She inspires her to work through a rehab. I want you to come and be my assistant coach. They are best friends today. She learned teamwork. She learned what it's like to look out for other people. She had a real relationship. She's defied the odds even going to college. And guess what? Danielle Green now has learned to use her right hand. And she delivers righty as good as she did lefty. So I ask you, no excuses despite your circumstances. I don't think I could have overcome that, but she did. And she's gotten honors, and I've been there, and she couldn't be more humble, and she's still making her way through. She now has 2 kids. So that's why I wrote the book. It's how you play the game. But one thing I've always had is a passion for history. And as I put those books out, I'm able to speak to groups about this, and I was able to make speeches, and one became New York Times bestseller. All of a sudden, I just took a few years off. I watched Bill O'Reilly pump out these history books. Now, when I have free time, like some of you guys ride motorcycles, some of you golf, some of you play tennis. For me, I just read, because my job is my hobby. I love reading history, and it gets me removed from news. So I said, Bill, I got this one story. It's about this spy ring. It's about these spies that lived and died without getting any acclaim or any fame, but yet without them, George Washington's words were, I would not have won the war. Who are they? They're from Long Island, where you almost were from. Everyone in Brooklyn, by the way. By the way, everyone in Brooklyn ends up in Long Island. It's eventual. Right? Yeah, I told you. Right? He's still there. So the spy ring, they learn more in the middle of a war than most CIA agents learn today before they go on a single mission. And I asked the CIA historians themselves to find out about it. They learned about dead drops, invisible ink, writing between the lines. They all had cover stories, and they worked for 3.5 years behind the scenes for Washington. Washington said, I need you to work for me. He inspired them like Vince Lombardi and Bill Parcells. He wouldn't just take in good intelligence for an answer. He says, you can do better. And they stayed together through the entire war, and they said, listen, I'll work for you, but don't ever give up our identities. And he didn't. But he did keep their letters. Enable their identity to be top secret till 1930, when Morton Pennypacker put the entire ring together. and we're still trying to put it together. So as I put it out, the book out, people started picking it up because you buy it for Washington, but then you realize our country is not made up of George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Andrew Jackson. It's made up of so-called average, everyday people doing extraordinary things because they're motivated by the idea, in this case, of democracy. They don't do it for a pat on the back. They don't do it for fame. They don't do it for riches. They do it because they're Americans. And what are most of us on an everyday basis? We're not trying to be one of the Kardashians. We want to make a living, set up our families, and set up a legacy that they can all be proud of. That's what these spies represented. And that book has sold just about 1 million copies. So I wanted to go out on a high. I did stand-up for 10 years, and they told me as I get to the last quarter of your act, if you get an inordinate loud applause or laugh, leave. Because you're not going to top it. So I said, that's it. I'm going to have these people begging me to do another one. And by the way, I had that idea for 20 years because I could go research it in my backyard. They said, well, what is you passionate about? I go, one thing that always intrigued me is that when they want to write about Islamic extremism, Al-Qaeda, ISIS, Al-Shabaab, they always say, well, Jefferson had to deal with this first. America always has Islamic extremism to deal with. And every time someone would write with some coherence about what we're going through right now, they go back to Jefferson. I looked in, there was only a handful of books about the Barbary Wars. So as Jefferson took on Islamic extremists, I was able to see what he did, how he did it, and then the same thing. You bought it for Jefferson, but when you closed it, you knew who William Eaton was and Stephen Decatur and his brother, and you knew about all these great Americans, Bainbridge, and you knew that they were dealing in North Africa, what we're dealing with now, mostly in the Middle East today, and sometimes in San Bernardino, and sometimes in Orlando. Islamic extremists who hated us just because of who we were. Jefferson identified in 1783. He didn't take on the fight until 1801. Adams, a great American, wouldn't want to fight it. Washington wanted to build a navy first. When Jefferson had the ability, he's not known as a warmonger. He said that's the only way to do it. So Thomas Jefferson, the Tripoli Pirates, just went back on the bestseller list 4 years after I put it out because people are fundamentally patriotic. They understand and relate to the characters. No one I know is as brilliant as the 6'3" Thomas Jefferson, right? But you can relate to so-called average, everyday Americans doing extraordinary things because they love the country. Because this, I imagine, is an extremely patriotic room who doesn't get up in the morning thinking I'm a Republican or Democrat, I'm pro-Obama, pro-Trump. You think about your family, you think about your community, and you think about your country holistically. So there's another story that I've always been fascinated with, and it was Andrew Jackson and the War of 1812. Who is this guy? Where did he come from? And why did that battle go so well for us? Too bad the war was over. Well, I found out later the war wasn't over, that the British had paperwork that proved, we found paperwork that proved the British wanted to hold New Orleans and stop us from going past the Mississippi. And in a war that started off so hideously bad, they almost pulled it off. So with that, I'd like to bring it to Andrew Jackson and the miracle of New Orleans. Because if you look at his life, a 13-year-old orphan ends up being a 2-term president of the United States, a lawyer, a congressman, a senator, a major general. That is American success story. Even if his life wasn't perfect, even though his decisions weren't all great, man, he overcame the odds. So here's a quick look in a few minutes of Andrew Jackson and the miracle of New Orleans, just an idea of what America was up against and who stepped up.
The War of 1812, America's second war of independence, was going terribly for the United States.
We were so weak, we've got just the worst generals, we got no plan.
The British, the world's premier economic and military power, thirsted for a second shot at destroying America after losing the Revolutionary War 23 years earlier. The most perilous and bleak time for the United States? The invasion and burning of Washington, including the White House.
But here at the Hermitage, Major General Andrew Jackson was seething, and his country was losing this war badly. America needed a leader.
Without a standing army, for President Madison, America's utter future hung in the balance. He found his leader in Jackson. His greatest challenge? Stopping the British forces from taking New Orleans.
If you lost New Orleans, and if the British controlled the great city, you lose the entire Mississippi River, and you lose all of our western frontier that we acquired through the purchase, so we wouldn't have been able to do westward expansion.
The plan? Build a wall, dig a canal, fill it with water, and wait for a British charge.
This berm, this protection, this wall was built in a matter of weeks, miles long, to protect Andrew Jackson and the American troops. Over there,
with thousands of British troops. What they wanted, that was New Orleans. What's at stake? The future of the country.
His mishmash of troops that comes in, part Choctaw Indians, Kentucky and Tennessee militia, Beals rifles, and free men of color. They're not going to go out and engage the British. Jackson knows that would be suicidal.
Any expert would tell you Jackson's ragtag army would need a miracle to stop the British from spending Christmas on Bourbon Street, and Jackson knew just where to go to ask for it.
Why would I be outside a convent when I'm trying to tell the Battle of New Orleans? Because this isn't just any convent. This is the home of the Ursuline nuns. It dates back hundreds of years. They prayed for Jackson's success. And among the people who think that these nuns brought him a miraculous victory, Major General Andrew Jackson himself.
It's the miracle. It's praying for a miracle, the Catholic Church and the Battle of New Orleans. I mean, that is where we know that there was divine intervention.
And that divine intervention would reveal itself in the final fight, January 8th, 1815.
This becomes a bloodbath here. The corpses, well, now we're just looking at green grass. It was the beginning of the end of Britain, and in many ways the birth of modern America.
Jackson's forceful leadership would help record one of the most decisive and stunning upset victories in military history.
When Andrew Jackson left his estate before the War of 1812, he was known locally. When he was done winning the Battle of New Orleans, he became a national star, maybe the most famous person in America. But more importantly, his win sent a message to the rest of the world that we would fight relentlessly and furiously for freedom. As for Jackson, he would ride that fame to 2 terms in the White House and go down as one of the most consequential and influential Americans in our history.
And he didn't have any political connections. He didn't know anyone in Washington. He was disdained when he ran. No one wanted to give him the general commission. It's only because they turned to everybody else and they failed that Jackson ended up coming out of the so-called backwoods down south to all of a sudden lead a bunch of men to victory. And he did it, I think, was so cool, is with a truly American force of Choctaw Indians, Cajuns, free men of color, as you heard. And he put that band together in 3.5 weeks. He arrived with 1,400. He ended up with 5,000. He took on 10,000. He had 13 killed, 291 wounded. The British had 1,262 dead, 484 missing, 3 generals, 7 colonels, 75 officers. The guys that were running right over us with the right leadership at the right time, with everything on the line, could not stop Jackson. Why? Luck, a little bit the pirates. They were able to give him some ammunition and told him where the swamps were and how this place ran out because they hated the British as well. And a little bit because perhaps there's divine intervention. And when people ask you, are we a country of destiny or are we an exceptional nation? Time and time again, the more you research, no one has a history like that. And just before we go flat on our back, when we do everything else and make these mistakes, we suddenly fix it and find a way to win. We would never be invaded again. We would then be accepted again. In fact, I thought it was kind of telling, too, that Jefferson was kind of an enemy of Jackson. Didn't really think he was a great American or worthy of the office. He said this: the defense of New Orleans should teach the nations of Europe that while Americans intended to take no part in their wars, neither would the country shrink from self-defense. And as Jackson would later define, they would tell us that the Treaty of Ghent was signed already. Here's what Jackson said 25 years later when he went back to celebrate the anniversary. If General Pakenham and the 10,000 matchless veterans, by the way, who just beat Napoleon, could have annihilated my little army, he would have captured New Orleans, sentryed all the contiguous territory. Through technicality, they were trying to overturn the Louisiana Purchase. They said we got it illegally. Great Britain would have immediately abrogated the Treaty of Ghent and would have ignored Jefferson's transaction from Napoleon. So he believed that. Historians show that. The British intent is already down. And again, he stood up. Now, was he perfect? No. But man, without him, would we have won? At 41 years old, without any formal military training, suffering from dysentery at the time, and some say gout, at 6'1", 135 pounds, he was in a lot of pain, and he still was able to prevail. And I thought that he was the type of American story we can appreciate. In fact, in the end, this is what he said at his farewell. I thank God that my life has been spent in a land of liberty, and that he was giving me a heart to love my country with the affection of a son to his country, and a father to the people. And the reason why people have bought that book is, I know we get the word out on Fox, but the other thing is, fundamentally, America loves their history. They love the story. If you tell someone, I have a story, you like stories? Yes. You have a story about your country, interested? Yes. You have a true story about your country? Absolutely. They care. And the next generation cares. I have a lot of 14, 15, 16-year-olds saying this is the first history book I ever read. And they're going to be rolling out Jefferson and Washington for young adults. And it's going to be coming out in the next few months. And I think that's the most heartening thing. The next generation has to understand what a great country we have. Everyone in this room understands that. The one thing at Fox that prevails, people say we're going too far left. Others say you're way too far right. We just wake up red, white, and blue. We wake up in the only station that I know of that doesn't wake up thinking, what did America do wrong? We know that we try to do right. And with a country that argues in front of people because we want to get better. And the people on the outside that misinterpret the arguing think we're coming apart. We just argue in front of strangers like we were always told not to when we were growing up. But we always get better and we always come together at the right time. We're the only country, as far as I know, that tries to do that thinks beyond our borders. So, again, I appreciate you watching. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you taking a respite from oil and gas. I certainly appreciate you guys having me out here today in Columbus. It's great to be back here because I understand as much as I live in New York and we got big bureaus in Los Angeles, our audience is in Ohio. Our audience is in the so-called flyover country. The first thing Fox did is address what everybody else in America was thinking about, and I think that is the magic behind our success. So thank you, everyone. I appreciate you coming out, and I appreciate you having me here today. Thank you. And I'll be signing any books that you want. I'll go outside and sign anything you want to, whoever I want to, if you feel as though you want to get Andrew Jackson or any of the others. But thanks again, everybody.